Well, hello everybody. My name is Marie Hurt. I am the District Youth Exchange Coordinator for 6690, so it's very good to see you all here today. I don't get to come very often for lunch. And I'm here to introduce today's speaker, Emily Schriver of Matriots Ohio. In Price Finley's most recent newsletter, he talked a lot about connection between people as one of the whys for why we participate in Rotary. So I thought I'd start my introduction with Emily by talking a little bit about our first connections. So we have a good picture. Emily and I first met as two trombonists in the Ohio State University marching band. So I have a good picture. We haven't changed at all. We look exactly the same. But it's an organization that for decades was primarily male-dominated. So infiltrating a mostly male-dominated group with Emily should have been my first clue as to Emily's future here at Matriots Ohio. So you'll learn a little bit more about that today. Even in college, Emily was an amazing example to her female colleagues. I don't think I've ever told Emily this before, but every decision Emily made was always beginning with the end in mind and very forward thinking. I remember hearing probably our sophomore or junior year that she was a part of the student representative for the Board of Trustees. And I remember having this moment thinking, I don't even know what a Board of Trustees is, and she's already on it. So I've been watching her ever since for clues for networking. Coming to Rotary was one of them. So after college, Emily married a good friend of our family, and so we have a double-pronged connection moving forward. She's continued her professional path at Northwestern's School of Law, Pritzker School of Law, worked in Washington, D.C. at Hogan Lovells Law Firm. Did I say that right? All right, in Washington, and then worked on policy at the Ohio State University as well. And she is here to tell us a little bit about Matriots as an organization, and everything good? And learning a little bit about their work for women in politics. So in perusing the Matriots website, the best one-sentence description I have found to describe the organization that Emily is going to talk to us about today is, here's the quote, a nonpartisan group of badass women who have just decided that enough is enough. And I can't think of a better person to lead that description than Emily. So please welcome Emily up to the podium.
Thank you so much, Marie. That was a fantastic introduction. I'm blushing, which I don't do very often.
We haven't seen the picture.
I know that we haven't seen. We don't have the picture, so we'll leave that as a cliffhanger for the picture to come at another time. You know, Marie and I were in marching band. The rows have 14 people who play the same kind of instrument. There were 28 trombonists total, and we made up half a marching row of women. So we actually had six. We had six march, and it was an active, so 12 people marched to our alternates, and 6 women marched in the active row. What row? Q row. We were Q row. I married X row. I married into X row, and Marie married into F row. So it's also a great place to potentially find a mate. Should you know folks on the lookout? Okay. Thank you so much for hosting me today and hosting the Matriots. We are thankful to be here with you today. I want to talk with you a little bit about what it is that we do, why we do it, and how you all can get engaged as well. It's critical for me to first recognize some of the members who we have. So we're a membership-based organization, and some of our members are also overlapping in members of the Rotary. And so thank you so much, Dana, for working with this for me. She helped me find Kathleen Latch, Jackie Cooper, Joanne Shortston, Carol Beckerly, and Mary Beth McCormick, who are all also members of the Matriots. We have a number of others as well. And Carol Beckerly, one note about her is that she also is an elected official here in the Columbus area and a member of your Rotary. And she is a Matriots endorsed candidate. We're going to talk about what that looks like, what that means, because it is, we think we are making a difference here in the state of Ohio, and a critical one at that. So if you don't mind, I know that the slides are going to be advanced for me, so thank you so much for your help. So we believe that when women lead, Ohio prospers. Some of you have said, I saw that sign somewhere. So you probably see our sign. You might see our bee on the back of cars driving around Columbus. We have membership all across the state of Ohio and a broad reach. So where did we come from? The history of the Matriots. So in 2017, there was a women's march. It was right within the first month of 2017. And many women and men gathered in Washington, D.C. to march around the Capitol, around the National Mall, over towards the White House, recognizing the need for more women's voices on a number of different issues. We had women from the Columbus community who were there marching together, and honestly, I was actually there as well. I haven't missed an inauguration, except for the time that I was living in Seattle with my husband. He was a man in the military. He deployed to Iraq, and so we missed the 2008 inauguration, but otherwise I love to be where an inauguration is happening. And so I was also in Washington, D.C. For the Women's March. But one of the things that we learned around that same time was, what about women? What makes women interesting in the population? What's happening with women in politics? And we know that 50% of the population are women. I think that's fairly well known. But 50% of the voting population are also women. The census tells us that from 2020. And women actually vote more frequently than men do. About 68% to 65% of registered voters, of people who vote in the actual election, are women. Ohio itself ranks 37th out of 50th. For women in elected office. So if we rank municipal offices held by men versus women, there are 36 states that have more women representatives from the municipal level up to statewide office than Ohio. At the time that the women marched in Washington, D.C., and I marched in Washington, D.C. too, there were 22% of our Ohio legislature were women. Still 50% of our population, but 22% of our elected officials at the State House downtown. And we know that Ohio currently has no women in statewide elected executive office. So there are women who are wonderful representatives on the Ohio Supreme Court. We have women who are fantastic representatives in our local community, on school boards, on city councils, auditors. But we do not have any who are currently elected in statewide office from either party. And we know that in politics, this was something that the Matriots founders, when they came back energized from the Women's March, they came back and they thought about, what is it that is making a huge difference in politics? And one of the things they said is, well, unfortunately, it seems to be money, which hopefully I hope I work myself out of business. I hope that money is never engaged in politics, but unfortunately right now it is. And they learned, wait a minute, women don't raise as much money as men do. Women do not have the ability to self-fund as often as men do. And when they do raise the same amount in a race as men do, they have more donors, more individual donors. So they have to engage a lot more with individual donors. Again, I would hope that money would leave politics. I'm actually kind of a purist in that way, but I'm also not naive. So I recognize that funding is critically important. So this group did research, spent about 6 months conducting research to say, okay, what already exists in Ohio and where can we be really beneficial? Would you click to the next slide for me? So they learned, okay, well, women control about 85% of consumer spending. Women are the ones who go to the grocery store. They are the ones who pay most of the bills. They control more than 60% of all the personal wealth in the state of Ohio. In the United States. They make 90% of household decisions. Sometimes my husband makes actually, I would say 75% of the household decisions because I'm out, running this work. We are incredible partners, but that is not true of every household. 1 out of 11 women own businesses in the United States, and that the wage gap here in Ohio actually kind of mirrors where Ohio falls for women's representation. We are 35th out of 50 states in the wage gap and pay equity for women in the state of Ohio. There have been studies for the past 10 years over women having more unpaid work at home Even when they hold a job outside the home, they have more care of the elderly or the aged or the ill, and more care of the young in our population. And they do a lot more of the non-office duties, non-work office duties. So, when I was in-house counsel at Ohio State, I was often the one who was on a committee. I was also the place where people would come to maybe complain about the boss a little bit. I was also the place where, what if we had a little bit of exercise for the group? And so I would organize, but maybe you can also see I'm an organizer of things. But women also do more of the non-work office duties around the office. So the Matriots took a look at all of this. They thought, what would be helpful for women in the state of Ohio and women in politics? Would you click the next one? So they created a political action committee. Does it click forward? Yeah, that's it. Okay, that's good. That's good. So they called upon friends and family, and they decided what we should do is create a group that endorses, encourages, and supports women who are running for office. So gets them funded and then also helps them gain wings once they are in office. So our goal, we have a bold goal, and it was bolder I will say it was even bolder in 2017. They started with this bold goal of 50% representation, so mirror what the population looks like, 50% representation by women by 2028. And I was like, that is a really bold goal, because we're coming up fast on 2028. We would have to move from about 27% of all elected officials to 50% all elected officials by 2028. That's very fast. We would have to invest in a lot of women to get there. But with this bold goal in mind, 500 people immediately signed up and said, we're in for this work. We believe it to be necessary that women's voices are heard. And I'll talk a little bit about the impact, why it matters. But 500 people signed up. We now have engaged more than 2,000 people across the state in the work that we do to get women elected to office. And we've endorsed more than, this is a tiny little stand. We've endorsed, I move around, don't move. We've endorsed about 400 candidates across the state of Ohio. So endorsement happens I'll talk a little bit about it, but endorsement happens in contested primaries. So not in uncontested primaries, but in contested primaries and also in the general elections. And through member donations, we then have invested in these 400 races across the state. So we're nonpartisan. We endorse candidates on either side of the aisle. Our endorsement, and I'll show you an image of what our endorsement comes with, but we believe that women need additional support in getting elected to office, and we do that along 5 endorsement values. We believe that our candidates must show where they stand on economic empowerment for women, access to education, equity and independence, dominion over our own bodies, and healthy, safe communities in which to raise our families. And yes, that is both sides of the aisle. So any political party, I guess you could even say in the middle of the aisle or to the right of the aisle or the left of the aisle, but they have to show how they will support women-friendly policies that will advance the women in the state of Ohio. So like I said, we started as a political action committee. A political action committee, there are multiple kinds of political action committees, and I'm here to talk to you about the kind that I have, but I'm also happy one-on-one to talk to you about other kinds of political action committees and how they operate. But the kind of political action committee that we have has individual members who donate, and we post lists of all of the members who have donated to our organization. Through those individual donations, we then pass the money on to candidates. So we invest in candidate campaigns in order to get women elected to office. We know that money is important in politics, and so we push it there. In order for a candidate to receive our endorsement, they have to apply. They have to want to be part of part of what we say about our values and part of what we say about women in politics. But they also have to go through a somewhat rigorous application and endorsement process. And that involves background research on every candidate. So they apply, they tell us where they stand on their values, they tell us what they hope to do with being in office, how they hope to change the world. And they have to tell us, are you planning to run for office again? What if you don't win this? They have to tell us what their plan is for running for office? Is it just, I'm hoping to win? Or are they able to say, I need to knock on 7,422 doors. I need to raise $14,876. And many have that very specific plan of how many donors do you need to engage, how many doors do you need to knock, how many votes do you need, what is your win rate? How many votes do you need? What's your plan to get your name out into the community? Is it just I'm making a web page and I hope to make it happen, or do you have a concrete plan? Our women come to us with a concrete plan in order to get our investment. Additionally, sorry, can you go back? I'm sorry, I looked over at you to look at the screen. Additionally, once they have applied, we do our background research into whether it looks like they align with the values. We then interview everybody. And we sit down with everyone for 30 minutes and talk with them through an engaged group of volunteers, talk with every candidate about these values and our endorsement. Then it's 2 levels of review from our volunteers and our board members before we issue an endorsement. And we would invest in that. We invest in every campaign. So if we issue if they're a Matriots endorsed candidate, we have also given them money because we believe that is what makes up the biggest gap. And as I mentioned there, every endorsed candidate receives both an endorsement, so they get a little, you get your card and you get a little sticker that says Matriots endorsed candidate, and you also get a check and a note from me, but that part is less exciting. Can you skip to the next one? Yeah, this one has a little bit of engagement. So I just wanted to show you we post a website for every candidate. So you can go online, you can read about every candidate, you can see why we picked her and why we wanted to promote her. There are a couple of candidates in really rural communities, like Highland County. We had a Highland County commissioner a woman who was running for Highland County Commissioner, who they don't have a ton of internet access. She was like, it doesn't serve me or serve my community for me to create my own website, but you guys are going to create one for me. Can I use it and give it to people so that they can see who it is and who I am? Absolutely. So we also create graphics for every candidate. We create slate cards. We mail slate cards to our individual members, but we also post on all the social media platforms about here are candidates in your local area that you might be interested in that align with our values. We send something called a Be Strong, which is right behind this last one. Yes, a Be Strong email. Which is actually one of the things our candidates say is their favorite. So I had figured they'd be like, Emily, send me more money. Like, everything's nice, send me more money. They say that, but they also say they love the Be Strong emails. They go out every day, 30 days before an election, and they just say, you're killing it. You're doing it. You're doing this for us. You're doing this for the women of Ohio, for the men of Ohio. You are engaged. We are thankful for you. And actually, the one that was up there, can you go back 3 for me? There you go. Oh, one more. There you go. So this one says, keep going. You make me feel like I could run for office someday. I'm so proud of you. From Lillian, age 12. And so that actually is my Lillian. I have 3 daughters. And that is my Lillian. I said, Lillian, if I were sending out the Be Strong, a lot of them come from women in politics across the nation or across the world, women who are engaged in leadership. And this one was the one, you can see it's a countdown. It's one day before the election. I said, Lillian, if you could tell these candidates this year one thing, what would you tell them? And she said, keep going. Just keep going. This has been a hard year, Mommy. I was like, it has been a hard year, sweetheart. So she said, keep going. And so we passed that on to the candidates, and that was one of their favorites last year. We direct individuals to information about our candidates on their own websites. And this is an image from where we did a campaign to push out the individual candidates into their communities. So we organized postcards into local areas. We also publish who won. We celebrate she won, which is one of the most exciting things. But we also publicize she didn't make it this time, but next time might be her chance, right? So it takes usually about 3 times running for office before you are successful. It's not true of everyone, but it's true of many. And so we need women to continue running for office, even if that first time they weren't successful. And so we make sure we say, save those yard signs, get some masking tape, we'll put it over it, we'll stick them out next time. We are here for you. Let us know when you're ready to run again. So what we've learned so far on our journey, we're 5 years in. We're 5 years into the Matriots. They started as this peer political action committee, yet also promoting women, giving women a platform anytime we had an event to get in front of members and donors and leadership, and elevating their voices. What have we learned since we started? And I've only been with the organization for 2 years, a year and a half. And what I've seen across our communities is that we are making a huge impact. Our candidates are in their communities. They are incredibly excited about the work. Today, running for politics is challenging, right? Being in any kind of political environment, someday I'm like, maybe I should move to rural France and just learn how to ride a bike or not learn the language at all. But most days, the people of the state of Ohio are absolutely critical for raising our families, right? My family, everyone's family. We want to live in a place where we can thrive. We want to live in a place where we feel safe and connected. And so our candidates are making a connection within their community, and so we are very happy to promote them. Our own independent success rate is 55%. So if we invest in a candidate race, our candidates have a 55% win rate, which is fantastic. We think we pick good candidates. We've endorsed every woman on Columbus and Cincinnati city councils. We've endorsed almost all the women on Cleveland and Toledo city councils. We just have endorsed in this primary race, this upcoming May primary, which is a partisan primary. But we have 3 members of Akron, 2 members of Akron City Council and 1 running for mayor of Akron. And so, especially in the cities, we're making a huge impact, but also in local races. County coroners, county auditors. We've endorsed, and you'll see this on the next slide, it moves pretty quickly, but we've endorsed the first women in many places, in many city councils, county councils, township trustees. And so these are just some places where our members are making an impact, and I'll pull this up on my phone so I can talk a little bit about each of these, because they scrolled by quickly. But we've also learned that we're oftentimes the largest donor to a women's campaign, and we're not like crushing it, making huge donations usually. But women really are getting $50, $25 donations. We might make a $250 donation and be the largest donor. Can you go back? Let's see.
Yeah, I'm trying to see if I can freeze it, but I can't.
No, I added a fun little thing, and then now it zooms. I made it too fun. We like to give early money when it's possible. If you wait until the last minute to give to a campaign, she can't spend it. And I need her to be able to spend it on, what do people spend money on? Maybe that's actually a really good question. Why does politics cost a lot? And I don't know that it should, but what do people spend money on? They spend money on those yard signs that you see. They spend money on websites. They spend money on organizers. They spend money on flyers and campaigns and mailers and getting information. Really, it's all to get in front of voters, right? To tell voters their story. A lot of times the way that I mentioned that there are other kinds of PACs than the kind of PAC I am, some of the other kinds of PACs, the way that they operate is to get in front of voters to tell them other information about candidates. That's not what we do. And our candidates use the money to get in front of voters to say, this is who I am. This is who I am. This is my website, because a website costs $7,000 to build often, unless you know somebody who does it. It costs a lot of money to build a website. So each thing costs money. And so our candidates often were the #1 donor to the work that they're doing. We had one story from a candidate up in Cleveland who was running for Cleveland City Council. She won. She was running for a ward seat, and she said, what I love about the Matriots is they sent me a check. I bought a billboard. I put my face on the billboard. It's at the biggest corner in my ward. Everyone passed by my face on their way to work. And she's like, I credit the Matriots for that billboard and also for the ability to win. That's Stephanie Howes, who is currently on Cleveland City Council. And many of our candidates say the same thing, that we are helping them get to more voters. We also know that our members love getting in front of candidates. They love to connect with candidates. They love to hear what candidates are working on. They like to know. A lot of women have not engaged in politics before. And this is, one of you and I were having a conversation beforehand about the need for more civics education and the need for more engagement. It is absolutely critical that we know how our government works. And one of the things that we can do is help our members connect with candidates to say, how is government working? What isn't working? How does it work for us? One of our formally endorsed candidates multiple times over is Allison Russo. She is the House Minority Leader. We've also endorsed Nikki Antonio, the Senate Minority Leader as well, the whips as well. And so, how does it work? How does a bill move along through the Ohio House? How is this happening? How do you, there's a lot of tension right now in the Ohio legislature. How is that working? How do we get something done for the state of Ohio, and how do you work on it? So getting our members in front of, not the other way around actually, getting these candidates in front of our members is a critical benefit that we've found is an impact. Okay, so my little scroller, I'm just gonna pause it. I wrote a few things here that I thought just in 2023 have been impactful. So that was what was scrolling up. And I'll just mention a couple of them. Last week, or 2 weeks ago, we had a presentation from Representative Bride Rose Sweeney and Lauren McNally, both of Northeast Ohio, both who worked very closely on the East Palestine train derailment. They came to present to our membership about the work that they're doing. One had introduced a bipartisan bill for transportation reform that includes protection and information and notification around the length of trains and train warning systems. The other is the head of the minority leadership on the transportation committee, and so had just passed the budget through the House. And so both wanted to talk about how trains and train derailments have impacted the state of Ohio multiple times over recently, and how train safety is critical in the work that the House is doing. And so that was just a few weeks ago. You can catch that on our website if you go to matriotsohio.com. Jessica Miranda and Juanita Brent have worked tirelessly on the Equal Pay Act for Ohio this year. Representative Michelle Grimm, who was formerly of Toledo City Council, is now a freshman lawmaker, freshman lawmaker in the Ohio House, is working on medical debt reform and relief. School board members Latoya Dowdell Berger and your own Carol Beckerly did a presentation with us just a few months ago about school transportation and accessing education. How do we get our kids actually to school? And in combination, that presentation was in combination with MORPC and CODA. What can we do as a region to think about how getting our kids to school matters and how that impacts their learning experience? Representative Rachel Baker, also a freshman lawmaker, Matriots endorsed candidate from the Cincinnati area, has recently pushed bills to speed up the adoption processes and to remove unfair practices to make sure that families can be created well. I'll take a personal privilege here. As a child who was adopted here in the state of Ohio, I'm incredibly thankful if we can make more adoptions happen and make it easier for people to adopt children and have good life. So you can end up here on this 40 years from now. That person could end up here on this very stage. And many, many more other opportunities. Hamilton County Commissioners Alicia Reese, Denise Driehaus, and Stephanie Summerow Dumas. We've endorsed all three women who are county commissioners. There are only three. So the entire county commission in Hamilton County, that's by Cincinnati. They have worked tirelessly creating a commission on women and creating a space for equal pay. So, this work is absolutely imperative, getting women elected to office, but also helping educate. I see across the room, I have women in this room, I also have men in this room, right? I do not want my men in this room to turn your ears off, right? It is absolutely vital that we elect representatives who reflect our community and are able to lift the voices and the needs. And I'm not here to say that men cannot lift the needs of women and they are not doing it. They absolutely are. But we also see that our women recognize through some of that additional caregiving, that additional household duty work, that additional non-work related office duties, they bring that perspective to the work that they're doing in the roles that they have. And so I would love to see more perspectives, and that is the work that we're doing. Not asking to take over, though. Give me time, maybe I'll take over. But getting to 50% to ensure that the perspective is there and the perspective is heard, because I don't see all perspectives, and neither does anyone else. So, in addition to what we've learned, I love to talk about hope and we're going, but I've also learned that it isn't enough. What we're doing isn't enough. We can keep investing in every single candidate who comes to us. We don't do that. As I mentioned, we have a rigorous process. We could invest in every single candidate who has raised her hand to run for office. We also don't do that. And we still would not get to 50%. We have currently between 27 and 29, it depends on the research, between 27 and 29% of our elected officials are women, right? About 30% of our candidates are women. And so we won't get to 50% unless we get way more people engaged in the process of being in politics, the process of helping others run for office, the process of understanding and wanting to vote, right? We have to do more. So where we're headed is that Ohio has 5 geopolitical regions. I don't know if you've ever thought about this, but Ohio is basically 5 different states here in the way that we act politically. It's fascinating. The University of Akron Bliss Institute has done critical research on why was Ohio the bellwether state? Why did it matter? And it was because there are these 5 different geopolitical regions. The way that Cleveland operates is very different than the way that Cincinnati or Hamilton County operates. In fact, Hamilton County kind of has a third party. I don't know if you know this, called the Good Government Party. Totally different than anything that happens anywhere else in the state. The impact of the labor unions are huge across the entire state, but really in the northwest Ohio area, fascinating connection for the way that labor unions impact even the most local of government, and not always in a good way. So I think it's really interesting. In Southeast Ohio and in the Appalachian region, obviously that is a very, very different economic drivers, very different political drivers, and what makes a political candidate successful, also very different. We have, over the course of the last 5 years, started to focus in on this map, on these 5 geopolitical regions. We have a bee theme, y'all. So we wear bees. You'll see our bees around our, so go back, sorry. So
I just want you to know you're almost running out of time.
I'm running out of
There's
time?
a lot of slides left, so
Oh.
I'm just trying to help out.
Thank you. I like it. Thank you. So we have the 5 different political regions we've split up into hives, and we interview our candidates based on these regions. And so the local areas in Northeast Ohio, our candidates are interviewed by members of our endorsement committee from Northeast Ohio. So we intend to continue investing in women's races all across Ohio, hopefully 200 this year. And we'll see. I'm really hopeful. Okay, next slide, I promise. Where we're headed, these actually go much faster. Where we're headed, we want to do more research. We need to understand the barriers that exist for women running for office and winning. And so we have been conducting research. We did the first of its kind research on municipal governments and how many women are in elected office across the state of Ohio. It's a heavy lift to figure it out. And we continue to do that work. We also have been doing work on who's running and who's winning. We've been connecting women to resources necessary to be successful in office, and we'll continue doing that. There are a lot of them. I'll share them with you another time. Can you click to the next one, please? We're going to be advocating for women-centered policies and legislation and educating voters on government issues. So you'll see webinars on our website. And the next 3 are actually just the same things. They're just visual representations of that. So you can see our research on our websites. Again, it is that when women run, they win. So they are running and winning in these same percentages. So we just need more of them to run. And you can see a little bit about political representation. The heat map in the left-hand corner is actually really interesting because it shows the concentration of women in office and elected office. Makes sense to me that there would be potentially more women in Franklin County and Hamilton County, for example, but there are some other counties that have, 31% of elected representatives are women already there. And so we're trying to figure out what's happening in those local rural communities to lift those women up, and how can we be helpful there. And then more educational offerings, you'll see those on our website. I write a lot, so you'll see me as a guest columnist in the Dispatch. This one's actually from up in Cleveland, but I write a lot, we write a lot, and why does it matter? And then the next one is just more advocacy. I like to be out in the community. I carry my sign, and so do many others. And these were our endorsed candidates from this past year. And so what can I tell you? What questions do you have? I will repeat them. So if it looks like I'm a little insane repeating your question, it's just so that our Zoom listeners can hear it. Yes.
Can you share your average donation dollar amount?
Share my average donation amount. I don't know if I know the average donation amount. I can tell you that for our active members, so members who have given within the last 14 months, over half of them have given more than $500 for a year.
How much do you give to a candidate?
We give anywhere from, I think the lowest amount is 100. We've given up to $13,704.41, which is the statutory limit. As of last year, it's now $15,499.69. So I might give that this year. Yes.
Yes. Do you have the statistics on how many women are involved in the training ground for public office, i.e. the Legislative Service Commission and the magistrates?
So the fantastic question is how many women are engaged in training women to be candidates? And the specific question was about LSC, the Legislative Services Commission, and what was the second training ground you asked about?
The magistrates.
The magistrates. So I don't know the percentage of women who are working with those particular groups. I will say that a number of different training grounds, including the Joanne Davidson Institute, which is for more right-leaning candidates, the Lead Ohio Training Institute, which is for more progressive candidates, the Yale Campaign School, and the John Glenn Institute's New Leadership Institute. All of those have started to have focus groups for women running for office, which is not quite the same answer to your question of how many women are engaged in helping them learn how to run for office. But I know that there are more programs starting to focus specifically on what might women need in running for office. And so in all of those spaces that I've just named, there's women leadership for those organizations. That didn't quite answer the question.
Not quite.
Not quite.
I'd be fascinated to know that.
It would be. It would be.
Just an observation, I just counted in our room, we had 19 men and 18 women here at Rotary today.
That's awesome. So very close. So what you just said, what's your name? Mike, who is fantastically running my presentation for those who can't see, just said that in a count here in our room, it appears there are 18 women and 19 men in Rotary today. So we've got, what is that, 51-49-ish? Yes.
I'm curious about if the Matriots has anything to do with going out and talking to young women in high schools around the city.
You are the second person to ask that question. So do the Matriots engage in helping women who are high schoolers in learning about political office? We have not historically. We started, as I mentioned before, investing in the races, and we're moving now to a space of more education. I do some speaking with regard to high school. So I've spoken at the Columbus School for Girls. I've spoken recently at Black Girl Dad Week, which was awesome and a lot of fun. So I would love to do more of that work, educating why it's important to have your leadership voice and then how to transition that. We also present at the New Leadership Institute, which is for college age women, but not yet in the high schools. Yes.
In a way, I hesitate because this is a real micro question, but so you interview all your potential folks. Can you describe, it's probably too hard to describe in general, but interested in why one of the women that you interview does not receive your endorsement?
Yes. So the question is, why would someone not receive our endorsement? And actually, I'm going to just take a quick, again, personal privilege. I was asked to join the Matriots as a member in 2018, 2019. And I was excited about it. I was gonna go, I went to a presentation, I met with a bunch of candidates, energy was high, and I was getting ready to leave. I was literally walking out the door and like, I don't have my checkbook, but I'll bring a check back, this is gonna be great. And somebody turned to me and said, "You should run for office." And I had not engaged at all on what my personal viewpoint is. I talked, but not really clarified what I would be like as a candidate. And so I did not join. I said, I don't think it is every woman. I don't think it shouldn't be every woman is receiving the investment of the Matriots. And so I waited. And in 2019, late 2019, they clarified those 5 values that I mentioned: access to education, equity and independence, economic empowerment for women, dominion over our own bodies, and healthy, safe, and prosperous communities in which to raise our families. They clarified those, and I said, you know what? I could see arguments oftentimes on both sides of the aisle about most of these values. And I could see women and men coming together to talk about how to best do this for the community, putting people first. And so I joined at that point, which is actually how I found out about this role and applied for it. It isn't about every woman. And so if a woman can't show us where she stands on those 5 values, we're not gonna endorse her. And so she has to show alignment on those values and show that she's gonna push forward women-friendly policies related to those 5. That's typically the space where somebody does not get our endorsement. There have been a few that were just really not quite ready to run at all. They didn't have a plan. There have been a few of those, but generally alignment on the values is the issue.
One more question.
One more? Yes.
Is there a race in Wisconsin involving a judge, a female judge, that's important to the national election that you're aware of?
Yes.
I think yes is the answer, but I am micro-focused on Ohio. So we endorse, I hear yes, 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 so I want a conversation about this. But for my focus, the question was, is there a race in Wisconsin that's important in the national conversation? And the answer is yes. I should have made this clear. We are statewide only, and we are state PAC only. We invest in the most local races here in Ohio, your township trustees, county commissioners, coroners, all the way up through statewide races, including state Supreme Court, state gubernatorial races, state elective executive officers. But we do not invest in a few different kinds of races. One, besides national, so not state, we do not invest in national Senate races or U.S. House of Representatives races. We won't invest in the presidential race. That has to do with the type of PAC we are. We don't invest in lieutenant gubernatorial races, and we don't, at least not this past year. There's always room for change. And we also do not invest in judicial races below the Supreme Court level. And the reason for that has to do with the judicial canons, where it's really hard for them to tell us where they stand on their values. So for Supreme Court candidates, I can review jurisprudence and review the likelihood of alignment. Can't say for sure, but you can review at least the likelihood of alignment based on past cases. For judges below the Supreme Court level, it's really hard to do that. To find case law. So it's a good question. Yeah. Can I just say thank you so much to you all for having me here? I know you were clapping, but thank you so much for inviting us to come. Thank you to Marie for that fantastic introduction. Thank you to Dana and to Sandy for your gracious gifts. Thank you.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Okay, I'm going to give 5 happy bucks for in honor of Emily being here today. I love that your information was so good, and I agree with you that we need more women in office too. And there's been many times I've seen on TV representation where I think, gosh, that looks a little lopsided. So whatever we can do to kind of make it a little more even would be wonderful. So thank you all for being here, and have a great day. And if you're going to stay, just give us about 10 minutes to get set up, and then we'll get going. Thank you all.